Overhead, a fiery comet tears through the night. A band of hunter-gatherers below stare up in awe and fear. This celestial visitor heralds an age of chaos. In fact, we now know that about 12,900 years ago, the world plunged into a sudden new ice age, the Younger Dryas. And with it, vanished many of the Ice Age giants. But their stone descendants will remember none of this unless someone left a warning behind. The Younger Dryas was a shockingly abrupt return of glacial conditions at the end of the last ice age. Starting around 12,900 years ago, average temperatures in the northern hemisphere dropped by several degrees in a matter of decades. Greenland ice cores record a sudden chill of up to 10 degrees Celsius in just a few decades, and the planet stayed frigid for roughly 1,300 years before swiftly warming again about 11,600 years ago. In North America and Eurasia, this icy snap coincides with the disappearance of many large mammals, mastodons, giant sloths, saber-toothed cats, and more. A 2021 study suggests that the drastic cooling itself likely drove these extinctions rather than overhunting by humans. So, what flipped this climate switch? The leading hypothesis is that massive lakes in North America, like Lake Agassiz, suddenly drained into the Atlantic, freshening surface waters and stalling the ocean currents that carry heat northward. In other words, a hydrological switch may have triggered the freeze. But the true trigger remains fiercely debated. For some researchers, the answer lies not in melting ice, but among the stars above. Some investigators point to extraterrestrial forces. Since 2007, a controversial impact hypothesis has suggested that a comet or meteor airburst ignited the Younger Dryas cooldown. Proponents cited layers of nanodiamonds and microscopic spherules in North American sediments dated to approximately 12,900 years ago, interpreting them as evidence of continent-spanning wildfires and devastation. That idea captured the imagination. What if fragments from a giant comet were raining earthward? Astronomer William Napier even modeled a scenario in which a massive comet, 50 to 100 kilometers wide, shattered and left behind the torrid meteor stream, one fragment of which struck Earth at the onset of the Younger Dryas. A buried crater under Greenland's Hiawatha Glacier was briefly touted as the smoking gun in 2018, but follow-up dating showed that crater formed about 58 million years ago, far too ancient to have caused a climate shift 13,000 years ago. Nevertheless, the comet hypothesis refuses to fade. It stands as a cosmic counterpoint to the mainstream freshwater melt theory. So far, no confirmed impact crater or precisely dated blast layer has been found from 12,900 years ago, or roughly 10,950 BCE, the start of the Younger Dryas. Most experts lean toward a sudden collapse in ocean currents, triggered by glacial melt. But without a smoking gun, the skyward theory lingers. What if our ancestors really did witness and remember a disaster from the heavens? In one of Göbekli Tepe's circular temples stands a towering T-shaped megalith known as Pillar 43. Carved in relief on its face are strange images: a large vulture, other birds, a scorpion, and an array of abstract symbols. Excavator Klaus Schmidt admits the pillar's meaning is unknown. "We don't know what the meanings of these symbols are," he said, adding they might depict buildings or mythic scenes. This ambiguity has turned Pillar 43 into the focus of wild speculation. Some alternative researchers argue the vulture stone encodes the very catastrophe it preceded. In 2017, Martin Sweatman, a chemical engineer, and Dimitrios Tsikritsis claimed these animal motifs correspond to star constellations and form a date stamp for a cataclysmic comet strike about 13,000 years ago. Sweatman proclaimed that Göbekli Tepe was an observatory for monitoring the night sky, and that Pillar 43 served as a memorial to the worst day in history since the end of the Ice Age. Popular writer Graham Hancock is even more dramatic. He calls Göbekli a profoundly astronomical site and reads the vulture stone as an ancient star chart. In an interview, he described it as if Neolithic builders had deliberately sent forward, in this time capsule, a picture of the sky in our age. Geologist Robert Schoch goes so far as to interpret the carvings as early writing, claiming Göbekli's builders preserved a collective memory of prior solar cataclysms on their pillars. If true, then Pillar 43 could be an arc of memory, a stone warning left by survivors of the Younger Dryas. But do these ideas hold up? The Göbekli Tepe team is far more cautious. The German Archaeological Institute emphasizes that these carved pillars form part of a shared ritual tradition, not an astronomical diary. Each circular enclosure seems to have an animal theme: snakes, boars, birds, suggesting an animistic cult venerating animal spirits. Schmidt himself cautioned that any cosmic reading is purely speculative. "We simply don't know," he said of the symbols. Excavators also note that the stones have shifted over millennia. Some pillars were recycled or even broken by later peoples, and parts of the temples may have had roofs. In practical terms, that makes precise sky alignments unknowable. When pressed on the pillar as constellation theory, the archaeologists published a pointed rebuttal. They called it extremely far-fetched to assume such a long tradition of knowledge about an unconfirmed event, and they doubted that Neolithic hunters recognized the same star patterns as classical astronomers. As for the broader site, Göbekli Tepe was almost certainly a ceremonial gathering place, not a city of advanced survivors. No dwellings, no farming implements, no writing or metal tools have been found there. In fact, the team now prefers calling these structures special buildings with a ritual component. To mainstream scholars, Pillar 43's images are most likely mythic symbols of a lost religion, not a literal warning. The stone may carry meaning, but it's probably art of the ancestors, not science taught by vanished gods. One of Göbekli Tepe's great mysteries is that the builders buried their own monument. In fact, the mound itself is entirely man-made. As project publications note, the hill was raised by intentionally burying those monumental circles about 12,000 years ago. Excavations reveal a complex, multi-stage infilling process. The enclosures were gradually backfilled with debris over generations until by roughly 8000 BCE, the original circles lay entombed under layers of earth. Why seal such a sacred place? The lead archaeologists suggest that Göbekli Tepe simply outlived its purpose. As Neolithic societies changed and farming emerged, the great stone temples may have become obsolete or taboo, and so they were ritually sealed. Other theories are more dramatic. Some writers speculate that the deliberate burial was itself a form of legacy-making. Perhaps the builders intended to entomb their sacred knowledge as a time capsule. In this view, Göbekli Tepe becomes an ark of memory, sealed in the sand to preserve the warning of a world-ending disaster for future generations. We have no way to know if that was intended, but the very fact of intentional burial only deepens the intrigue. Up next, Göbekli Tepe may not stand alone. About 45 kilometers to the east lies Karahan Tepe, a long-overlooked sister site, first excavated in 1997. It's smaller than Göbekli, but unmistakably related, with dozens of T-pillars carved with snakes, vultures, and even human faces. Its age appears to overlap Göbekli's, and it too seems to have been inhabited only briefly during the pre-pottery Neolithic. Archaeologists now acknowledge that Göbekli Tepe is not a one-off oddity. Karahan Tepe shows that it is certainly not a one-off, one report observes. In other words, the architects of the Fertile Crescent left a network of stone monuments. Join us in Episode 5 as we journey to Karahan Tepe and follow the expanding trail of megalithic knowledge, seeking more clues to what our ancestors wanted us to remember. We thought Göbekli Tepe was the beginning, the first whisper of civilization carved into stone. But what if it wasn't the beginning at all? Roughly 35 miles east of Göbekli Tepe, another hill sat in silence for thousands of years. Locals called it Karahan Tepe. At first glance, just another potbelly hill. But in 1997, excavation teams broke through the surface and found something even stranger than Göbekli. Beneath the soil, megalithic T-pillars, dozens of them, just like Göbekli. Same style, same technique. And yet, Karahan is different in a profound way. Because unlike Göbekli's open-air enclosures, Karahan Tepe goes underground. Its most iconic structure? A subterranean chamber, a long rectangular hall dug into bedrock with phallic stone shafts rising from the floor and a massive human head carved from limestone, emerging from the wall like it's watching or waiting. Archaeologists found over 250 T-pillars scattered around the site, more than Göbekli Tepe. Many are unfinished or still buried, and like its older sibling, the site lacks any clear signs of daily life. No hearths, no homes, no fields, just symbols, just stone. There are carvings of serpents, again. That now familiar motif, twisting along the edges of pillars. But this time the focus seems internal. Where Göbekli looked to the sky, Karahan looks inward, beneath. One of the most controversial features? A prominent carved phallus, nearly life-size, rising from the floor of the sunken chamber. Now, mainstream archaeologists describe it as a fertility symbol, a sacred gesture toward regeneration and ritual rebirth. But let's entertain another idea. What if this was a rebirth of civilization itself? A seed planted in stone, not just for one people, but for the world that came after. Because Karahan Tepe doesn't just resemble Göbekli. In some ways, it might precede it. Some researchers suggest Karahan may be older than Göbekli. The dating is still being debated. But if true, it upends the narrative we thought we had. It suggests Göbekli wasn't the lone temple on the hill. It was part of a broader system. And that system might have been mapping more than just myth. It might have been built to remember and to rebuild. When you lay the blueprints of Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe side by side, the resemblance is undeniable. Both sites use T-shaped pillars. Both feature animal carvings, serpents, foxes, birds, and abstract symbols. Neither was meant for daily life, but the similarities are just the beginning. The differences? They're what start to bend the timeline. Göbekli is a ceremonial complex built above ground. Its rings of stone rise into the sky. The site watches the heavens. Many enclosures align with celestial markers, Deneb, Sirius, the solstice sun. Karahan, on the other hand, is more internal. The focus is downward. Its most iconic chamber is fully subterranean. Its giant head, eerily lifelike, emerges from the wall as if carved to witness something deep within the earth. What does it mean when two cultures, supposedly primitive, create megalithic monuments with a shared symbolic language, but completely different architectural strategies? Here's the kicker. Karahan's bedrock shaft is not only architecturally unique, it also shows signs of being older than Göbekli, or at least contemporary. Some of the stone tool technology and construction choices suggest a tradition already in place, a style already refined. And if Karahan came first, then Göbekli isn't the dawn of civilization. It's the next chapter. That changes everything. Some researchers propose that Göbekli and Karahan weren't separate projects. They were coordinated, part of a regional initiative, maybe even the remnants of a centralized knowledge system that survived the Younger Dryas cataclysm. Around both sites are clues, not just in stone, but in strategy. These weren't randomly placed shrines. These were deliberate monuments. They reflect an architectural vision that implies transmission of knowledge, not spontaneous tribal expression. And this raises a deeper question. If Karahan Tepe is part of a pattern, how big is that pattern? Karahan Tepe and Göbekli Tepe might just be the tip of the megalithic iceberg. In 2021, the Turkish Ministry of Culture unveiled something monumental, a broader initiative called the Taş Tepeler Project, Stone Hills, aimed at exploring over a dozen related Neolithic sites across southeastern Turkey. These sites are scattered across the Sanliurfa province, some no more than 10 kilometers apart. Most haven't been fully excavated yet, but initial surveys show the same design language repeating again and again: T-pillars, symbolic carvings, monumental architecture, and nearly all date back to the pre-pottery Neolithic. The same mysterious window of time, from 9,600 to 8,200 BCE. In a conventional timeline, this would be impossible. Our ancestors were still supposed to be nomadic hunters, yet here they are, carving stone temples in a coordinated pattern across an entire region. And they're not just repeating motifs, they're evolving them. Each site has its own flair. Sabers, for instance, features two carved human figures, one holding his phallus like a staff, the other grasping a rattle or a club. It's raw, symbolic, and deeply ritualistic. Sefer Tepe and Harbetsuvan reveal fragments of enclosures similar to Göbekli's rings. And one of the most recent discoveries? A buried T-pillar unearthed in Çakmak Tepe, just 6 kilometers from Karahan. This isn't scattered tribal expression. It's a system, a shared architectural grammar, transmitted across generations and miles. So here's the speculative leap. What if these were more than temples? What if this was a memory network, a post-cataclysmic grid of sacred knowledge sites. Some researchers argue that survivors of a global catastrophe, possibly the Younger Dryas impact, might have seeded these hills with encoded myth, sky maps, and cosmic warnings. That Göbekli wasn't a one-off, but a node in a larger system, a Neolithic arc of information. Could these sites represent a kind of proto-religious priesthood? A culture tasked with preserving knowledge across generations, using stone as its medium? Were the Tash Tepeler sites primitive churches or memory beacons? Now the mainstream answer is simpler. Archaeologists interpret the Tash Tepeler as sacred spaces for regional ritual, built by early sedentary groups forming the first agricultural villages. They see no lost civilization, no catastrophe, no encoded science, just symbolic art and communal feasting. That's the safe story. But even they admit the network scale is unprecedented. These sites rewrite what we thought we knew about the origins of civilization. And yet, one question remains. Why are so many of them buried? One thread runs through all the Tash Tepeler sites. It isn't just the style of their stonework, or their obsession with animals, serpents, and abstract gods. It's the fact that so many of them were buried. Just like Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe and other surrounding sites show intentional infilling, not by erosion or time, but by design. Archaeologists have confirmed layer upon layer of deliberately piled limestone rubble, animal bones, and broken tools. It's not destruction. It's a ritual. So what were they sealing off? What were they hiding, or maybe preserving? Mainstream voices suggest the burial was ceremonial, that when these temples fell out of use, they were respectfully covered like tombs for forgotten gods. But others, researchers like Hancock, Schock, Sweatman, propose something bolder, that these sites were deliberately buried as time capsules, that what they encoded was too important to risk. Imagine a post-cataclysm world, the sky poisoned, the land freezing, whole species gone. Survivors huddle together, not just to rebuild, but to remember. They don't just pass on stories, they carve them in stone. They place them in specific alignments. They build monuments that speak without words. Then they bury them. For us. These sites weren't abandoned, they were sealed. Their builders knew what they were doing. The question isn't just who built them, it's who they were trying to talk to. And if that message was meant to survive a global catastrophe, maybe we're the intended audience. Because here's the thing, Turkey's not alone. Across the globe, from Egypt's desert sands to Indonesia's jungle, from Bolivia's highlands to Easter Island's heads, megalithic echoes rise out of the past. Were these ancient cultures all building on their own? Or were they remembering something together? Every continent has them, towering stones arranged with care. Some weigh hundreds of tons. Some are carved with a precision we can't explain. Others point to the stars, and almost none of them fit the timeline we've been taught. At first glance, they're just ruins, but look closer, and a pattern emerges. Take Gunung Padang in Indonesia, once dismissed as just an overgrown hill, until core samples revealed stacked man-made layers buried deep beneath the surface. Radiocarbon dating? As early as 24,000 BC, before farming, before writing, before history. Archaeologist Dr. Danny Hillman Natawijaja calls it the oldest pyramid in the world. Indonesian officials were intrigued. Western academia, mostly silent. Half a world away, Turkey. At Göbekli Tepe, rings of carved stone pillars rise from the earth only because they were deliberately buried, not by erosion, not by time, but by hand, on purpose. Even Easter Island, home of the Moai, tells the same story. Those iconic heads? Most are full-bodied statues buried to their shoulders. Why? The quarry still holds hundreds of unfinished giants, as if the project was suddenly abandoned. 3 sites, 3 continents. One strategy, build in stone, then bury it. Why go through the effort? And why hide it? In Peru, the walls of Sacsayhuaman defy explanation. Stones the size of trucks, cut, lifted, and locked together without mortar. So tightly, not even a razor blade fits between them. Historians say the Inca built it in the 1400s, but the Inca said otherwise. To them, the walls were already ancient, raised by the first people, or by gods. The builders? Forgotten. And then there's Pumapunku in Bolivia, At 12,000 feet above sea level, stone blocks shaped like interlocking H's, some with interior boreholes, right angles, and grooves, like parts from an abandoned machine. No cranes, no chisels, no metal tools, just stones too heavy for modern forklifts, cut with techniques we still can't reproduce. Before the pyramids at Giza, there was Nabta Playa, a stone circle in the Egyptian Sahara, aligned to mark the summer solstice, built over 7,000 years ago. This wasn't shelter, it wasn't burial, it was astronomy, a calendar rising from the sand long before Stonehenge. But Nabta isn't alone. Across the world, megalithic sites are obsessed with the sky. Göbekli Tepe aligns with Deneb and Sirius. Easter Island's Moai face celestial points. Even Tiwanaku's structures may point to solar events. These weren't isolated tribes guessing at the heavens. These were sky watchers, mathematicians, architects of cosmic intent. Graham Hancock has a theory. These aren't isolated marvels. They're echoes, fragments of a global civilization that flourished during the Ice Age and fell at its end. He calls it fingerprints of the gods, survivors of a global cataclysm passing knowledge to coastal peoples, knowledge of the stars, of stone, of memory, not aliens, not magic, just memory preserved in myth. Martin Sweatman sees Göbekli Tepe as a prehistoric observatory. Robert Schoch believes it preserves the memory of a solar cataclysm. Different voices, same whisper. Something happened, and someone tried to warn us. Because when you lay these sites side by side, Turkey, Egypt, Peru, Indonesia, Polynesia, you see cultures that never met, but built the same way, aimed their monuments at the stars, and buried them like time capsules. Mainstream archaeology says that coincidence, natural formations, primitive tools, local ingenuity. But what if it's not coincidence? What if it's a message? Too many sites, too much precision, too many cultures remembering a golden age, a flood, gods who taught them to build in stone and study the sky. And here's where the trail goes dark. Excavations at Göbekli were halted. Scans of Karahan Tepe remain unreleased. What lies beneath the Sphinx is still off limits. Who's deciding what we're allowed to find? If these monuments were warnings, what are we not supposed to see? In our final episode, we go back, before Karahan, before Göbekli, before even the myths. We ask one final question. What if Göbekli Tepe isn't just a monument? What if it's a memory, a voice from a lost world, silenced but not forgotten? It started in 1994 with a shepherd in southeastern Turkey. One misstep, and history cracked open. What he thought was just a rock turned out to be the top of a 10-ton T-shaped pillar. The first clue to a sanctuary older than writing, older than agriculture, older than memory itself. By 2006, archaeologist Klaus Schmidt had unearthed 4 enclosures. Scans showed dozens more still buried. Göbekli Tepe wasn't a village, it was a statement. But about what, and from who? In 2018, just after it was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, something unexpected happened. The digging stopped. Only 5% of the site has been excavated. The rest was roofed over or left untouched. The official reason? Preservation. But the most promising radar scans, revealing even more circular enclosures, were shelved, quietly. Even Schmidt's widow, Dr. Cheatham Köksal-Schmidt, warned that Göbekli was becoming a brand more than a scientific project. When history becomes marketing, truth can get lost in the packaging. Just 35 miles away, Karahan Tepe emerged from the same Neolithic culture, but this site told a darker story. Carvings of serpents, subterranean chambers, over 250 T-shaped pillars, and at its heart, a stone head rising from the wall, blank-eyed and watching. Excavations began in earnest around 2020. Drone footage showed massive trenches, smooth pits. One archaeologist called the architecture symbolic, another unprecedented. Then, silence. Photos showed no clear entrances, no pathways. Radar scans revealed voids, chambers, enclosures, maybe tunnels, but no follow-up, no access, no data. Karahan wasn't granted UNESCO status, but Turkish officials brought it under similar protection. The digs slowed. The tourism ramped up. New trails, photo ops, but no science. Excavation records? Unavailable. Skulls recovered from Göbekli, held in private labs. Radar scans? Denied. We're told it's for preservation, but what exactly is being preserved? The ruins or the narrative? Because what if the underground at Karahan holds more than altars? What if it holds archives, instructions, testimonies from a world we're not supposed to remember? And the silence isn't local. Across the globe, monuments hint at secrets beneath the surface, but when evidence emerges, the ground is closed. Under the Sphinx of Giza, radar detected a chamber in 1992. Thomas Dobecki confirmed it. Robert Schuch called for exploration. Egyptian officials under Zahi Hawass shut it down. No access. No explanation. In Bosnia, a pyramid-shaped hill in Visoko revealed tunnels, megalithic stones, solstice alignments. Dr. Samir Osmanagic led the digs. The academic backlash was swift, funding cut, excavation halted. Even Saqqara, one of Egypt's oldest sites, revealed sealed shafts in 2020. A major discovery, officials said, but released no diagrams, no data, just a photo op. Each time a site threatens the conventional timeline, the same thing happens. The tools go down, the gates close, the press gets a headline, the public gets a story, just not the whole one. This isn't some grand conspiracy. It's a system, quiet, persistent, controlled, not to protect the past, but to control its interpretation. Because if Göbekli is older than we're allowed to believe, if Karahan holds forgotten knowledge, if the Sphinx predates dynastic Egypt, then everything shifts. The foundations of human history start to crack. Maybe that's why the ancients built in stone, not just to worship, but to warn. Maybe they buried their greatest works not out of fear, but out of hope, that one day someone would dig deep enough to listen. Göbekli Tepe wasn't destroyed. It was sealed, intentionally. So was Gunung Padang. So were many of the Moai on Easter Island. This wasn't erosion. This was remembrance. What if these weren't temples, but messages, monuments designed to speak across epochs, saying, "We were here. We knew things. Something happened." This is where the trail ends, not in ruins, but in silence. And in that silence, echoes. Göbekli Tepe may not be the beginning or the end, but it might be the message, a voice from a lost world buried in stone, waiting to be heard. And maybe, just maybe, those who hold the keys know what it would mean to open those vaults. Maybe they're not ready, or maybe they think we're not. But we're not here for the curated version of history. We're here to follow the truth, no matter how uncomfortable or how deeply buried. This was our journey through forgotten time, forbidden dig sites, and stone-built memories. Thank you for walking it with us. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay digging.
Curiosity calls, we show you the facts. How about that? Don't let the mystery lack. We'd love to hear from you. You know the rules, it's true. The golden words are like and comment and subscribe to. We love to hear from you. You know the rules, it's true. The golden words are like and comment and subscribe to. Curiosity calls, we've shown you the facts. How about that? Don't let the mystery lack. Don't let the mystery lack. Curiosity calls, we've shown you the facts. How about that? Don't let the mystery lack. But if you want more, then you know what to do. All you gotta do is hit that button. Join us next time for the tales we tell. Curiosity